Morning. Welcome to Alright, What's Next? Today we're going to try and make a set of polyhedrons, or dice if you're not a gaming geek. So I made a video not that long ago about making the essential tools that you need for making pins. And part of that was dealing with the resin for making resin pins. And a buddy of mine that watches these videos commented, have you ever considered making dice? Well, I hadn't before the comment, and then once he made the comment, then of course that's all I could think about, and I have to freaking go ahead and do it, because once an idea that I like, where I want to make something, gets into my head, it just like starts bouncing around, and it just picks up speed, and it gets to the point I have to do it. It becomes almost an obsession. So, Joe, thanks for putting that in my head, Dick. So I got online and I went and found a relatively cheap set of silicone dice molds to make a full set. Now, this is technically not a full set. I've got a D4, a D10, another D10, a D8, D6, some little D6 that has 2 plus signs, 2 minus signs, and 2 blank sides. I don't know what that's for. It's apparently for a game that I've never played before. The D10s, when I say D10s, that's just how gamers freaking call them. Dice, D10, whatever. When you play role-playing games, tabletop board games, sometimes you got to roll percentile. So you need 2 D10s. You'll have one that represents the 10s, 10, 20, 30, 40, and you'll have one that will represent the singles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You roll them in conjunction. If you roll, this one's an 80, this one's a 3, you rolled an 83%. Whatever this set that I bought came with one that is labeled 10, 20, 30, 40, that's how it's numbered, and it's small just like the rest of them. But then it came with this giant stupid one that's with the singles. Usually, you just have 2 different colors of dice, and you designate which one's going to be the 10s, which one's the singles. This one has it labeled 10s and singles, and the singles, they decided to make it frickin' twice as big as the other one. This one's dumb. I'm not going to use that one. This plus minus one, that's dumb. I'm not going to use that one either. What it should look like, that's a full set of polyhedrons. You should have a D4, D6, there is a D10, there's a D10, D8, D12, D20. This set didn't even come with a D12. I don't know why. It's probably because it's the least used dice. But whatever. That's a full set. That's what you want. This is not a full set, but this is an experiment. We're going to go ahead and give this a try. If this works, maybe I'll look into getting a better quality set of silicone molds. This is my dice box that I've had for years and years that I've collected. It's not all of my dice. I think I got other D6s, because you can buy crates of D6. For certain games, you got to roll like 400 dice at a time, especially if you're playing like Robotech, the old RPG game for Robotech based off the cartoon series. You need to roll tons and tons and tons of dice when you're firing off missiles. But that's my set of dice. We're going to try and make more. What I want to try and make is a set of dice that are going to be the same color as my logo. Now I've got this liquid yellow right here from Alumilite. It's called Flow Yellow. I was going to use that, and then I have metallic red. I want to put just a little tiny bit of metallic red in it. Put some streaks in it, and then I was going to do the numbers black. But I was going through all my other mica powder, and came across beer color. I think we'll go ahead and we're going to try the base as beer color. This might be a mistake because it might end up making my dice look like a bucket of piss with a reason to go see a doctor. But that's what we're going to do. Beer with some red mixed into it with black numbers. So what we got to do, mix our resin first. I don't know if this is going to turn out well or not because my part B looks like it's starting to get a little yellow color to it, but we'll try it. Don't know. Who knows? We'll give it a try. If it turns out like crap, discolors it, we'll know that this isn't any good anymore. And I already marked my Dixie cup. We'll fill part A up to here, part B up to here. They're a 1-to-1 mix. Now I'm going to have two different colors, but I'm going to mix one batch of resin and then just separate them. That way I have the same density of resin. If you try and mix them separately, you'll wind up with two different densities of resin. And they'll have different weights. And then the heavier one, usually the one that has more of the part A in it, will sink to the bottom and you won't get a good mix. All right. Mix them. I just got an old paintbrush. The resin you want to mix for probably a good 2 minutes and make sure you get it thoroughly mixed. If you don't, it's not going to cure right. All right, that should be thoroughly mixed, so we're just going to take a little bit of this, not very much, pour it into another cup, and just a little bit more. That'll be our red. So let's mix in our beer color. Now once again, I want these to be somewhat translucent, see-through, whatever you want to call it. So I don't want very much pigment in there. At least with the beer color. Like I said, with this mica powder, a little bit goes a very long ways. So I just got a little tiny bit on the end. Dump it in there. You can add more. Yeah, I want a little bit more. Alright, that's the color I want. Well, that may remain to be seen. That might not be the color I want, but that's the color we've got. So, now we've got this little tiny bit here we're going to mix in red. This one we not so much want translucent. So if we get a little too much in there, it's alright. Trying to open up a frickin' bag with gloves on. It's a pain in the ass. Alright, resin's mixed. The way these molds work is they got a little cap and you just frickin' squeeze them, pop the cap off. It's got numbers blended into them. So what we're going to do is, this is a pain in the ass. I need a board for these to sit on. We'll pop our caps off. set our molds. And we're going to pour some of this beer color in. We don't want to fill it all the way up. Alright, I got a little too much resin in the D4 mold. We're going to just go ahead and scoop some of that out. Now we're going to take just a little bit of this red, a couple of drops. I got a little pin. We're going to just kind of add a hint of a swirl here. Alright, so now it's time to cap them. They all have little air holes on top of them. Okay, they're all molded. I got enough left. I'm going to go ahead in this overly large, stupid looking D10. I'm going to go ahead and just mold it up just because I've got the resin to do it. Charge the air compressor. We'll put them in the frickin' pressure pot here and let them sit overnight. See what happens. Alright. So here's the pressure pot. We're going to go ahead and we'll just set all these guys down in here. Get your lid with the air line friggin' hooked up. I already got my compressor set at a 40-pound discharge, so it can't put any more than 40 psi in here. Once again, I think I discussed this on another video. Maybe not. But you don't want to risk overcharging your pressure pot. It's got a gauge here that you preset to 40 psi. It's got a pop-off valve here. If it should overpressure, it's supposed to pop off. But I like to turn my output line on my compressor down to 40 psi. That way, it is just another line of defense to make sure that it doesn't accidentally overcharge this, because you don't want to frickin' bomb in your shop. This 40 psi is going to go off. It's going to go off and it's going to blow out your windows. It might kill you. Alright, it's all sealed up. Our dice are down in here. So turn the valve on. You just go really slow. Just barely crack it open. Just let it start filling. Watch your pressure gauge. If it looks like it's going to go past 40 psi, shut the valve back off. Once it gets up to about 40 psi, you can go ahead and crack it all the way open. This is not quite at 40, so we can turn our gauge up just a little bit. Alright, we're at 40. So, the inside pressure of this is now at 40 psi. We can shut that, disconnect that. We let this sit overnight. And then tomorrow we'll come out and we'll demold it, see what they look like. If they turn out cool, I'm sure we're going to have to do some sanding and cleanup. We got to get some paint out. We got to paint the numbers. I might even have to break down and go out and buy a buffing wheel to turn these things freaking shiny, glassy looking. But let's see what tomorrow brings. Alright, it's been close to 24 hours. Not quite 24 hours. But let's go ahead and open this thing up and see what kind of disaster we made. Overnight, it did bleed off some pressure. I'm down to 20 psi, but you know, overnight 20 psi loss isn't bad because the resin's going to be cured within the first hour and a half, 2 hours. You're not going to get any more air bubbles out of it anyway. So let's just vent off the excess pressure. You don't want to open that up without venting. That would be stupid. I'm going to open her up and see what kind of disaster I've created. Alright, let's start with the D20. And right off the bat, this one ain't no good. It's got a giant freaking air pocket. If it wasn't for that air pocket, it actually would have turned out perfect. Probably can't see it, but right at the very top where the lid was, it left a damn air pocket. Other than that, the dice formed freaking perfectly. Nice and shiny. So trial one, that's... I have to work on getting the air out of it. Let's see how these other ones turned out. Yeah, same issue here. So I'm going to have to do some experiments, figure out what I'm doing wrong. I don't think I got it full enough, maybe. It formed perfectly all the way around. But up where the lid went, it didn't form right. Try the D4. Yeah, I'm definitely not doing something right with the molding. I think I got to put more resin in because it's leaving a void at the top. The coloring wasn't bad either. Got a nice swirl to it, but I got to figure out how to get that void out of there. How to make sure there's no air pockets in there. And I think maybe I need to put more resin in to where it's kind of overflowing. When I put the lid down in there, it forces everything up out of that little vent hole that's in all of the lids. I'm going to have it overflowing to where there's resin just coming out of that little hole big time. But as far as molds go, they molded nice. The numbers are all perfectly clear. If these things would have turned out a little bit of paint on here, and these would have been a really nice freaking set of dice. But as it is, we'll just set them aside. We'll call them failure number one. Alright, so on with the dice experiment. My first one was an epic failure. I mixed up a whole bunch of resin, and all of them had this huge void in it. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before, so I tried another one off camera. This one, I decided I'm not going to use the pressure pot. Maybe that was an issue. No, pressure pot is an absolute must. You have to put this under pressure. Because my second experiment, it is nothing but it's just riddled with friggin' air pockets. You hold it up to a light and it is just kind of a milky color because there are so many air bubbles in there. So that did not turn out well. Although the second one, an interesting aspect to it, I didn't do a real good job mixing my resin. I got the mix off. I didn't get a perfect 50-50 thing. So these are squishy dice. Kind of wish I knew what mix I made with that, because that would make an interesting set of dice, make it like rubber bounce ball dice. But those are failure. So I went on to a third experiment. This time what I did was I filled the mold up, put the lid on, had extra resin available, and I took a little stick pin and I just started putting it down through the vent hole in the mold and just kind of slowly working air pockets up out of it. And I just kept doing that over and over, and then I would pour a little more resin in, work with the stick pin, trying to pull the air pockets up out of it. And just, it took probably, I spent probably 15 minutes doing this on just these two dice. And what I wound up with was a D10 percentile dice that had a very small little air pocket, and a D20 with a fairly large air pocket that's really no different than the other ones. So it's a complete waste of time. So what I think I need after messing with this 3 different tries, you've got your mold. What you need to do, put your lid on, and we're going to take hot glue. We're going to put a wall around the outside of this, around where the lid is, and we're going to build up a dam that we can put resin in, to where as air pockets come up and pop, resin can drop down in. We need a reservoir that resin can just drop down in and replace the missing, fill in the void left by the air pockets. I have any idea otherwise how to do this. I think that's what we got to do. We got to just put hot glue around here so we have resin to draw from, so when it's under pressure and them air pockets, them air bubbles come up, resin can drop down in there. So that's what we're going to go ahead and give a try. So first thing we got to do, get a little friggin' cheap hot glue gun. Shouldn't need much. Right there, that ought to be more than enough. Just a little tiny frickin' wall that we can add added resin in. Alright, we got that. Let that glue set up a little bit. Alright, it's thoroughly mixed, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to frickin' kind of try and slowly drizzle it in and fill the mold like this. Alright, it's been 24 hours-ish, so we can go ahead and release pressure off of this thing, get these dice out and see if my idea works, or if I gotta refine it some more. Oh, it's not looking good. So that didn't work either. I don't know what the problem is. That actually is worse. Another failure. I don't know what's going on with it. maybe if I actually watched some video to figure out how to do it. Alright, so back to the dice. First attempt, failure. Second attempt, failure. Third attempt, failure. Fourth attempt, failure. After this fourth attempt, I had pretty much decided to just throw the damn molds away and move on. Things weren't working. This was my first attempt using hot glue to try and make a reservoir around it. My first attempt at doing it, it didn't work out well. They turned out horrible. So I figured I was just going to call the video done, call the dice experiment done, move on with my day. But I went and I cranked the stereo up really loud, drank a few more beers, stared at the freaking dice, stared at the mold, and like, you know what? I'm going to give it another shot. I'm going to try some things a little bit different. This time what I did is went ahead and mixed up all the resin, took the caps off the molds, poured the resin into the mold, and then just kind of squeezed the mold a little bit, try and work up any air pockets that might be down in the bottom of it. Then I put the caps on the mold, squeezed it some more, took a little stick pin, stuck down through the little vent hole on there, worked any air pockets up, dribbled some more in to refill the missing resin from the air pockets I've worked up out of there. Then took the hot glue and made a bead all the way around, let it set up, made another bead all the way around the lid, let it set up, and I built up a decent wall to act as a reservoir. My fifth attempt, made two dice, a D20 and a D10 percentile die. The D20 was a near success. It has a very tiny air pocket left on it. What I figured with the D20, because this top is so small, when I put the hot glue on there, there just wasn't enough reservoir, or the reservoir wasn't big enough to draw from. I didn't get enough resin in there, so I still was left with an air pocket. So if I do this, when I do this again, I just need to spend more time and build a higher wall on the D20 mold because the cap is so small. That way I can get more resin in there to draw from. But my D10 percentile, it's got a significantly larger cap. I was able to get a fairly good size resin reservoir on the top, and I got my first successful mold with 0 air pockets in there. It even has enough where there's a little knob sticking up on top of here that we're going to have to cut off. So after 5 attempts screwing around with this, I finally have my first dice. So now we're going to go ahead and see if we can finish it, which means I'm probably going to screw up my first successful molded dice. What we're going to do is we're going to try and trim this off with an X-Acto knife. Then we'll probably sand the edges with some 600 grit sandpaper to get the edges nice and crisp. And then I'll run through with my wet sanding pads, which start out at 1500 grit, goes up to 12,000 grit. See if that brings the shine back up where we have to trim this. We might hit it with a little plastic polish if we need to. And then we'll paint the numbers, see how it turns out. So let's start trimming this thing. We're going to take the little reservoir mold thing off. We'll just clip that with these little nippers. And take an X-Acto knife and just see if we can't just trim these edges. Then we got to paint the numbers. I use this white gold, and I got my Reaper paint set here for painting tabletop miniatures. I haven't painted in a long time. I've got an extensive Warhammer 40K Imperial Guard armory over there underneath the bench, and it's about a 10th painted, if even a 10th painted. So this just sits underneath my bench. Rarely, if ever, it gets used. And it's like I always want to get into it, and I dig the models out, and then I get bored. But I've got them if I want to use them. And I think with this white gold, I want to use something completely contrasting. So I'm going to use this jade green Reaper paint. So we'll get that out. I got an inexpensive little detail paintbrush here. I think you probably just paint into the numbers, and then we'll take a damp cloth and wipe the excess off, and hopefully it'll leave the paint down inside the numbers so you can see them clearly. Eventually, I think I want to buy an acrylic buffing system. It's basically like a benchtop grinder that's just got soft buffing wheels on there, and you put a buffing compound on there, and you take your acrylics as the last step and put them up into that buffing wheel, and it takes all the little tiny micro scratches out that you really can't even tell, but it reflects light poorly, so it dulls the shine. That'll remove all them micro scratches and really bring the shine up, make everything look crystal clear. But that's a purchase for the future. I got too many other things to buy right now. So let's go ahead and crank the music back up. So I got to turn the volume off, and we'll clean this up. We'll paint these numbers. And my first finished dice. Can't get too close to it because my camera doesn't do up close. But I'm not real happy with the white gold, but I like the jade green contrast with it. It's a nice looking dice. Now if I still played D&D and other RPGs, I've got another percentile dice to throw down on the table. But I haven't played any of them in a long time. I'd like to. Every time I want to get back into it, pick up a book and start looking, I get bored really fast. I have trouble sitting in a chair. I like being up, moving around, and doing things. So just sitting there for 5 hours and playing a role-playing game anymore, I get bored, unfortunately, because I used to enjoy them. But I have another die. I can go back in my collection of store-bought ones. Now, if this is something you want to get into, it's certainly not going to be anything that you're going to go and make yourself rich off of. In fact, I think it would be virtually impossible for you to make any money whatsoever doing it in this fashion, because this is an extremely time-consuming process. Even if you get it right on the first try, you still got a minimum of a 24-hour time period from when you start it to the time you finish. Resin only has so much working time, so it's not like you can make up 100 dice and get them all in the pressure pot at the same time. By the time you finish up your last mold, your first ones have already set up, so you're basically going to be relegated to doing just one set of dice at a time. So you do one set every 24 hours, take in the amount of time allotted to prep the molds, prep the resin, pour them, put the hot glue reservoir on there, get it all done. You're looking at probably 45-minute time frame or so to do that, just to get them into the pressure pot. They sit in the pressure pot, and then if you got a whole set of dice here that you got to clean up, polish, paint, you're probably looking at a couple hours worth of work to do that. So you're looking at pushing 3 hours of just tedious labor sitting here working on a set of dice. If you want to go with a cost standpoint, say you want to pay yourself $20 an hour for the labor you're doing. So now you're 3 hours into it, so you got $60 worth of labor. Materials are nothing. You probably got 75% worth of resin and color and paint involved in it. So the materials are they don't matter. They don't work into the equation. It's so minimal, but it's the labor involved. You have to put a dollar value on your labor, and even $20 an hour is a relatively low range if you're trying to go into business for yourself. So one set of dice, in order for yourself to make a profit, you're probably going to have to charge $65 for one set of dice, and that's if you don't even have any packaging for it. If you want to make packaging for it, then you could be bumping up to like $80 for a set of dice. So I really doubt you're ever going to find anybody out there that's willing to pay $80 for a set of handmade dice when they can just walk down to their local game store and pick up a set for, I don't know, what, $8, $9? I'm not sure what they go for. I haven't bought a set of dice in probably 15 years. And when I bought them, they were like $6.50. So with inflation, yeah, they're probably pushing $9, $10. So this is something that's a cool hobby. It's fun to do, and it would be great if you got like a game group and you want to go through the effort and make a custom set of dice for your core group of players that show up, you know, every weekend, every month, or how often you get together, or you got a gamer geek in your family that you want to make a birthday or Christmas present for. This would be a great way about going about doing it. But yeah, definitely not there's not really a fiscal option here. You're never going to make money doing it this way. I'm sure there's got to be a way of making dice where you can make money, and companies are out there doing it. I just don't know how. Like I said, I haven't watched any videos. This was a complete and total learning process. A lot of disappointment, multiple failures. Got a little angry at it there for a minute, but I calmed down, tried it again. Finally got my first success. Now I'm pretty confident I can go back through. I'm going to make more of these dice. I'm going to make my own full set of dice. But I'll do that off camera. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Hit that like button. Go ahead, hit that like button, and don't forget to turn on notifications. See you next time I post a stupid video. See you next time.